Hi, friends. It's Heidi M. I am coming back with another interview. It's been a busy week, but it's been a fun week. I am going to be speaking with two cast members of Shakespeare Bash'd production of The Two Noble Kinsmen coming up in Toronto on January 25th. They are Michael Mann and Emilio Vieira, who are playing two titular characters, Arcite and Palamon, in the story. The play itself is a collaboration between Shakespeare and his protege, John Fletcher, and is one of Shakespeare's last plays. The play's been described as a mythic story of two honorable cousins who are sort of bound by duty and love, and there is an event that takes place where they get closer together as friends, and but also are sort of torn apart. So I'm not going to say more about the play. It's one that is not often produced. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing the play. This production, again, is by Shakespeare Bash'd. The company is based here in Toronto, but I will leave you with my conversation with Michael and Emilio. Hi, Emilio and Michael. So nice to be in this virtual chat with you.
Hi.
Hello.
So for anybody who's going to be tuning in, I am speaking with Michael Mann and Emilio Vieira, who are going to be playing leads in the Two Noble Kinsmen production by Shakespeare Bash'd here in Toronto. So congratulations on being part of this ensemble cast. But before we dive into the play, I want to encourage maybe a bit of an introduction from each of you, sort of your array into theater and any other work that you'd like to talk about.
Michael, please.
Michael? Yeah.
My name is Michael, and hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us. I am an actor. I've had the privilege of working with Shakespeare Bash'd for a couple of shows, and this is the most recent one. Outside of being an actor, I'm also a playwright. I have a show coming up at the Shaw Festival, which is exciting, and I'm also quite an avid community member, doing some volunteering within the theater industry.
Excellent. Thanks. Emilio?
And my name is Emilio Vieira. I'm an actor, creator, was based in Toronto until very recently. Now I'm based in Stratford, always back and forth between the two towns. This is my second full production with Shakespeare Bash'd. The first was Cymbeline, which was in February of 2020. And as you can tell by this title, Two Noble Kinsmen, I like doing the weird ones with them. Little things to know about me. I'm about to embark on my 7th season with the Stratford Festival. I have a little bit of a nerdy desire to do all of Shakespeare's plays in the canon before I die. And I'm also an avid cricket fan and advocate for sports in theater and in community. I think the line between what we do in sport and what we do in theater is very, very, very similar. So those are some of the things that I find joy in. And it's such a joy, actually, fun little fact, to be doing this show with Michael Mann. Michael was in the very first union gig, my very first professional gig that I ever did 10 years ago. We did Shakespeare in Hyde Park together in 2014. So it's nice to come full circle a decade later and to do some Shakespeare together again.
I like that little tidbit.
Yeah, that's great. So, maybe let's talk about Shakespeare a bit. What is it about Shakespeare that, even though for some folks may feel a bit outdated, that still sort of draws you into engaging with the work, either on a personal level or professionally?
Yeah, I find that what Shakespeare does so beautifully is investigate these themes that, of course, were very relevant at his time. And the beauty that I think he wasn't aware of is that 400 years into the future, we would still be talking about these things. But as is the case with our play, we are diving into some really human experiences of love, of courtship, of honor, of duty and desire. In my experience, doing his plays over some time now and having some repeats, even as you age, as you get along with the material and return to stuff, the themes are ever present, and your perspective shifts in between those points on the constellation because of all the life you've lived in between. So I think we have a really unique opportunity here with a Shakespeare that people, even those who do Shakespeare, don't know particularly well. And that means that, there's a great common denominator among an audience. There will be those hardcore Shakespeare Bash'd fans that come to every show and have been exposed to quite a lot of Shakespeare throughout the lifetime of Shakespeare Bash'd. And there will be folks who will come for the very first time seeing this play or the very first time seeing Shakespeare. And we have the same job, which is to engage and explore with those themes and try to provide an entertaining experience ultimately, but one that leaves you leaving the theater asking questions about those themes, about how they relate to yourself in the world now, and maybe give some reflection on what that history of 400 years of humanity has experienced under the umbrella of some of those themes.
Right.
Selfishly, I mean, that's so gorgeous. Can I steal that? And
Correct.
I mean, for me, so many people talk about Shakespeare and its language, and selfishly for me, I am a bit of an English nerd, and something as odd as the syntax or the history of the word or how a sentence is formed, what makes poetry, what doesn't make poetry, what are the images in those, that I find interesting to explore. And through the works of Shakespeare, as Emilio has said, there are so many themes and human experiences that still remain relevant. In this particular show, the friendship drives me. Bonding between two cis men is interesting to me. What that means, regardless of labels, those are all interesting ideas that really, for something that's written 500 years ago, is still part of everyday conversation now.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I was reading about the Two Noble Kinsmen, I've never seen a production of the show. I understand that it's not always sort of performed. So I'm curious to experience it this time around, but it does kind of revolve around your two characters in a way, like Arcite and Palamon. And I read a piece where they kind of talk about a bromance between the two. And, it's some interesting ways that some people have described the show. How did each of you come to your respective role and sort of prepare in sort of not just learning, obviously, the dialogue, but from a personal sort of standpoint? Michael, you want to take that first?
Yes. I was like, oh, I'm so curious about what Emilio is going to say. I think with any particular work I do, it is about trying to figure out through the learning of the dialogue, through the learning of what the play is, how then my life experiences may or may not be reflected in what I'm saying. And so through that is a lot of self-examination, as well as examination of the text in its period, as well as the text being done now in our current society here. So to answer your question, how do I think that's what I do. It's a reflection of, it's like a in-person experience of a journal entry.
That's great.
That's what it is.
That's great. I love that.
I like that as an image. Yeah, I want to build off of what Michael is saying about context. Particularly for me as a person with an awful memory. I know that might shock some people, an actor with an awful memory. I return time and time and time and time again to the text, especially with this play, in that it is some more challenging language than I've experienced. It's co-written Shakespeare and Fletcher, so we're getting two very different styles exploring the themes in this play. But in terms of my preparation and what I continue to do, not only to find the argument structure, the logic in the piece, and what is being expressed by the playwrights through their written language, but how it filters through my body is kind of a process of scavenger hunting or completing a puzzle, taking a concept or an idea or a question through the lens of what I know the play is asking and the words that I'm actually saying. Michael and I were in rehearsal yesterday and having a chat afterwards about, okay, so, I was asking myself this question and I was looking at my actual language. What are the things I say? And sort of, I can interpret that my answer to this question we were exploring is maybe something like this because of XYZ that I say. And so I'm always looking for clues in the text to tell me something about what the character is going through that betrays a kind of an emotional state so that can balance with textually what's happening with the logic and their arguments. And ultimately, at the end of the day, you do all of that work, and you have to kind of throw it away to be able to just stand in front of your scene partner and speak and work out the problems on your feet. I have a very lonely track in this play in that I really only have scenes with Michael. So that's also a great joy in that I know every time he and I are on stage together, the text is in good hands and that we can be playful with exploring those interpersonal things that bring the humanity from it just being a written thing to something of a relatable human experience.
That's so great. As I hear you speak now, I'm wondering if there are any sort of favorite lines or moments in the play that kind of just hit you in some way, if you know what I mean.
Oh, there's so many.
Right?
And I don't want to give anything away.
I know. I don't want to get too much into the plot either because I think it's an experience, but, what are some moments?
I do think it's an experience because so few people have seen it or know it.
Right.
So, what kind of Shakespeare can we say we actually may have spoilers? That's so exciting.
Oops.
Yeah, so many. I'm trying to think, Michael, jump in if you have one.
The one moment I have is actually the first moment of us coming into the beginning of Act 1, Scene 2, because this is the first time you meet the two kinsmen in conversation. And it is terrifying because you just jump right in. There's no warming up. I mean, you warm up before and you get ready or whatever, and then you go on, and then the text is right there. You got to ride the wave, and you hope to make one of those first impressions.
Right. Yeah.
One of my favorite lines, I think I can say this without it giving away too much, is our site has just attempted to comfort me in a scenario that we're in, and says that he can see that there are two comforts rising, and the two comforts are the two of us together. And I say in response to that, "'Tis most true. Two souls put in noble bodies, let them suffer the gall of hazard, so they grow together, will never sink. They must not say they could." And I've always enjoyed that as a kind of hopeful mantra about what their relationship is. Two souls put in noble bodies, let them suffer whatever shall befall them, whatever hazard, whatever chance, and they will never sink. I just think that's a really hopeful and beautiful thing to say, especially in a time of a trying situation that they're involved in.
Yeah, very trying. That was a lovely line. Actually, that was one of the sections in the play that I found quite moving. I'm glad it resonates.
Did you read the play?
No, I actually skimmed through some key. I'm almost like an English nerd. Obviously I'm not an academic, but English was one of my favorite courses back in the day. But I think it's the benefit of having really good teachers as well. Just wanted to put that out there, that if you have really good teachers early on in your education, then some complex text like Shakespeare doesn't seem too much or too hard to understand.
I was going to say that earlier when you talked about just sort of people saying why Shakespeare, or is it relevant, or sort of doubting its existence as a thing that we continue to investigate. And that to me just says that people who ask those kinds of things, I think, didn't necessarily have the same experience that I had with a teacher in grade 10 who, when we read Macker's or R&J, really unlocked the language for me. And it's not that it comes to me naturally, it still requires the work. But I find joy in that work, in that problem solving about it. And it really began, because of an English teacher who took it from this dusty tome and made it active and made it alive. So I hope that that's possible to achieve in a audience interaction where the audience can come in and witness our work, be a part of it, and experience the sort of group mentality of other people responding to it. And that might help them unlock it. Because even James, our director, would say, an audience, even scholars, are not going to understand every single word that passes by. It's quite a lot to digest, but you are going to grasp the context, the import, the sort of stakes of what's going on. And hopefully that encourages a hunger for greater knowledge about it. Like, oh, what was that was said? I thought it was so beautiful, or this was my takeaway. I love theater that makes audiences think as they leave.
Exactly.
Which is an invitation to come see this show, because I do believe that, Shakespeare is meant to be seen, to be read out loud, to be played. So instead of reading it, come and check it out.
And I was going to say, Michael, like, I'm so excited that audiences are very soon going to join us, because they're the last character to arrive. We do all of this work behind closed doors, for the most part, or at home alone. And then you get together, you start putting it together. And at this stage, you can feel it needs to be witnessed. It's like whatever that scientific phenomenon is about particles behaving differently when they're being viewed versus when they're not being viewed. That's how I feel a play can be, is that now it is the time to invite the eyes and ears, because for us who know it so intimately now after having worked on it for several months, it's time to test it on other fresh human ears. What is your experience with the play? I'm super interested with this one to engage in dialogue with people afterwards, because I'm curious. No one's ever done, nobody ever does this play, as you said. So it'll be interesting to hear some feedback.
Did you want to add anything here, Michael? Or
I'm so excited.
Yeah, I know. I do feel the excitement. So it's, even if it's virtual, it's nice to sort of nerd out on plays and theater and Shakespeare. So I do appreciate you being so generous. When we're thinking about productions like Shakespeare Bash'd, which can be a bit different from what we experience at Stratford, for example, what would you say is the appeal of the production, such as Shakespeare Bash'd? Is not totally ornate sets, is not a million of props. I actually don't mind it, but I think it's also, like you were saying, the experience of listening and using all the different senses to sort of put together or pick out the themes in the play.
I think that is exactly the point in which they're trying to sell, and what puts this company different than the other Shakespeare companies in Toronto. They are bare bones, come in expecting a bare bones production that is actor centric and that is text focused. Our work is on the delivery of the text in hopefully an understandable and clear manner, telling the story through the verse, and that is reliant on actors who can speak it in a clear and distinct way.
And largely whole, uncut as well, for the most part. So you get to experience it in as close a way as to what I think Shakespeare would have intended, rather than coming at it from the perspective of requiring adaptation, or I think the sort of anachronistic modernization that may occur from watching people in their street clothes do Shakespeare, for example, is only to give the text this platform upon which to be seen through the lens of modern society and society from 400 years ago and every stage in between. I think that Shakespeare Bash'd is also about audiences being able to see one another do the play. It's a very intimate space during the play, audiences to witness one another. So it's a very intimate space at the theater center and the incubator. We have audiences on three sides, and we are among them and close enough to them. I think even just in yesterday's rehearsal, recognizing how little vocal effort is required to be heard in that space means that it's less of a declamatory, stuffy Shakespeare experience, and it's more about real people in real life scenarios trying to work it out amongst their peers. It's exciting. It's very exciting in soliloquies, for example, to be able to turn to somebody just sitting a few feet away from you and ask a question, and then parse it out. I think it makes for a very active viewing experience.
It's so great. I mean, I've attended before, so I enjoy it all the time, but I always sort of want the part of people witnessing each other. I think I love that part because I do like to scan the room to see how people are reacting and taking it in, right? I mean, at any theater, but I think the setup in the incubator is actually quite cool for that. So is there anything else that you want audiences to kind of be aware of coming in? I know the Two Noble Kinsmen is going to start January 25th, but what else can we look forward to, and what else is enticing?
I think what's so wonderful about this play in particular is that it seems not to really sit in a genre. It seems to be such a rich and large world that there really is something for everybody in this play. There's action, there's drama, there's comedy. There are many ensemble characters playing multiple parts and doing those turns really quickly and really beautifully. I think it sort of is like a true company experience of, here's a play. It's kind of a challenging task, and what we've managed to do with our ensemble is really, really fascinating work with this very rarely produced play. So we've been encouraged in rehearsal to sit and watch when we're not on stage, and I've found such joy in that over the last few sessions in the room, because I learn something new about the play every time that I witness it. And then I'm diving back into something that we've, long rehearsed, and suddenly it's just changed by the impact of repetition, or even as your ear starts to hit things over current events or over something in your own life. I'm very excited for audiences to join us and just have their natural reactions to engage with our exploration, because over the course of time, we only get to do it for 10 performances, January 24th to February 4th. So that means actors are going to be out there taking some risk, learning a little bit of sort of, where's this average response? Oh, that's great. And now let's fly. Let's see how far we can go. Because I know for myself, I'm going to wake up on February 5th and go, oh, that's how I should have done it. But but in terms of preparing an audience, come to the theater center early, grab a beer from the cafe, really enjoy the vibe in the space, get to know your colleagues around you, and the play will take you from there and sweep you away into that incubator space. I hope you will join us.
And also, from the signature stamp of all the Shakespeare Bash shows that are bare bones, that are verse-based, that are, as Emilio also added, not very much cut, it's an invitation for modern audiences to see whether or not something like this holds up after 500 years. We have no concept on top of it, none of this. We try to be as verse central as possible. So then we can have this conversation about, what is the relevance of Shakespeare? Is it relevant? How is it relevant? Does it still hold for you individually as you come and see us do this?
That's great. Thank you both so much. Such a lovely conversation.
Oh, thanks.
Likewise.
Lovely
Looking
to meet
forward to the production.